workplace, we know thousands and thousands of women who are pregnant or new mothers face discrimination and indeed risk losing their jobs. In fact, one of the, I think, striking facets of the debate in the House of Commons were the number of comments made by members of Parliament about the impact on women of pregnancy and the insecurities in the workplace. And the Noble Lord True did acknowledge this. The bill could have been so much more. It is a missed opportunity, and I do think I accept what the government has said about the work that's being done. But it does potentially, we are being asked really to set up a two-tier system for maternity leave in this country, and there is a feeling of discomfort about that. My Lords, it's been a very good debate so far, and I listened with great interest to Lord Randall's comments. I must say I disagree with him about the issue of language, because I don't see that as a technical issue. I think fundamentally there's a much more important set of principles that lie behind the way the language was used in this bill. In the Commons debate, there were a colleague of mine has counted up the number of times women was used. It's over 300, my Lords, over 300, and yet the bill makes no mention of women. And we heard this, I think, rather inelegant term, person who is pregnant. It doesn't seem to me to add to what we understand as good English, does it? A person who is pregnant or a person who has given birth to a child. My Lords, I've supported trans rights and gay rights over many years. I fought the iniquities of Section 28. I took through the legislation allowing for gay adoption in this House as a minister. And, my Lords, I have to say to the noble Baroness Lady Noakes, who I enjoyed her speech, that working in London and living in Birmingham, I'm a fully paid-up member of the metropolitan bubble and proud of it. But, my Lords, I have become increasingly concerned that the hard-won rights of women over many, many decades are at risk of being watered down and marginalised as the single-sex spaces enshrined in the Equalities Act 2010 comes under increasing attack. And the fact is, this is why this language is so important. Many public bodies are misinterpreting the Act, in my view, and many women's sector organisations, especially those who are seeking to end violence against women and girls, fear loss of funding and commissioning if they want to provide single-sex exemptions. And I'm afraid, my Lords, that various government departments have weaseled down the words of the Equality Act in the guidance they've issued to public bodies. Local authorities have misinterpreted the Act and are threatening many small charities trying to provide these services at local level, and people there are frightened to speak up because they believe that they will be attacked, and actually, if they're not careful in social media, they'll be accused of transphobia. And the government remains silent because the government itself has got a lot of this philosophy embedded within its advisory system. That's, my Lords, that's why the wording of this bill is so important. I mean, my Lords, work by Jane Clare Jones and Lisa Mackenzie has described the pattern of erasing sex in data collection and other areas of public policy. The ONS has caved in to bullying. Pathetic. The head of ONS was interviewed, I think it was on the Today programme, and said that they were not going down the path they've now chosen. But they've caved in, as many public bodies do, because they come under aggressive attack in social media and accused of transphobia. The government, my Lords, remains absolutely silent. The language. I agree. Baroness Gale, I really thought it was a very, very thoughtful contribution. Baroness Gale, my neighbour friend, she talked about the fact that gender-neutral terms will often be appropriate. I agree with that. But, my Lords, do we really want to see demeaning terms such as menstruators, individuals with a cervix, birthing bodies, or even chest feeders? Yet, my Lords, when the Brighton Trust announced this, where was the Department of Health in saying it? Absolutely silent, my Lord, because they're cowed. They're frightened to speak up against this kind of absolute nonsense. We know, there are many parliamentarians who know this is nonsense. They're frightened to speak up because of the abuse they will receive. Look at my honourable friend Rosie Duffield. What support has been given to her? Hardly anything, my lords, except from a few brave, dedicated people. It is shameful, shameful that we've allowed this situation to arise. That, my lords, is why this bill and the drafting of it is so important. My lords, the justification, of course, was Jack Straw's change in the Convention and revised guidance. But as the No Barnsley note said, my lords, that was designed to promote the rights of women, because previously he was always taken to mean he and she in legislation. For that to be used against women in this bill is, I think, extraordinary. Now, my lords, I have looked up the Parliamentary Council guidance. It was produced by the latest version is produced by the Drafting Techniques Group in 2020. My lords, this is a most worthy body, but it's not one that should be at the heart of government decision-making. I noted the advice on page 2 when it says clarity is helped by the use of short sentences. Tell your story in a moderate or level tone. Legislation speak firmly, but not shout. And while brevity may be good, brusqueness is not. Well, my lords, that is good advice, but is that slavishly followed in legislation? My lords, I very much doubt it. And let me say, we understand 6 pieces of legislation since that guidance was issued, in the original guidance of 2000, have used the word women, including the seminal act, the Equality Act of 2010. My lords, I have to say the 6 minutes is a guide. It is not something that can be enforced by anybody in your lordship's house. So, my lords, I will carry on, because this is a second reading debate, my lords. We do not have time limits. Well, thank you very much. I don't usually get this support, and after 23 years here, it makes quite an unusual change.
But we do have to get through this debate at a certain time.
With respect, we do not have to take the Privileges Committee report tonight. This is a second reading debate, and, my lords, I'm afraid advisory guidance on a second reading debate is highly inappropriate. But I'm not going to go on much longer, my lords. But I do want to say this. The Noble Lord Shrew was very helpful in arranging. We had a meeting last week. We're meeting him again. I'm very grateful to him. He must know, my lords, that this bill, in the way it's worded, is indefensible. If this had been a normal second reading, the Minister would have observed this debate, would have gone back and said, we're going to get an amendment and we've got to change it. I know we've only 4 days to go, but I would urge him to think again. My lords, he should also say that this will never be used as a future precedent in legislation. He should ensure Parliamentary Council change the guidance, because I don't think it is up to the mark. Finally, my lords, this is my great appeal. Please will the government defend women who speak up for the protection of women's rights based on sex. My lords, I come again to the outrageous abuse that some of my parliamentary colleagues have received by stating in perfectly reasonable terms they are not transphobic, they are reasonable people seeking to do their job, and yet, my lords, they do not get support from the people who know that what's happening to them is wrong. My lords, above all else, I hope the Minister will say something about that.
I now call Baroness